We were hitchhiking through Europe with my then boyfriend, and on our way back home, a truck driver picked us up. We had had a few weird encounters on our trip before, but we had been on the road for about a month, and nothing really scary happened until this guy. He was a young guy, about 25, quite ordinary, spoke English okay, and had been away from home for a long time. I was a bit younger, with my boyfriend being around his age. My boyfriend was tired, so he took a seat on the bed in the truck and wasn't really trying to hold a conversation. During our trip, we took turns, as I usually do when I hitchhike with someone, with one person talking with the driver while the other relaxed in the back. So I was in the passenger seat. I think my boyfriend was even dozing off a little bit, and the driver started complimenting me and asking about my boyfriend. It was still fine, nothing too weird, and I was just trying to engage in conversation to be good company. As we continued, I started to feel a bit uncomfortable, but I didn't show it and only told my boyfriend that we should look for truck drivers from our country to make the last part of our trip in one go. I translated to English immediately because the truck driver became agitated and suspicious of what I was saying. I explained that we were really tired, and our plan was to find our truck drivers before he had to take a long break, so that we could continue traveling without interruptions. We stopped for a short break at a gas station, and my boyfriend decided to look for another truck driver in the parking lot, leaving me alone with this guy. The truck driver made unwelcome advances, and I was scared and didn't resist. I could sense his intentions, and he was visibly aroused. Fortunately, my boyfriend returned after just a minute. At that moment, I realized we needed to get out of this situation quickly. I didn't want to say anything to my boyfriend because I was afraid of his reaction, so I decided to pretend that nothing had happened and remained determined to exit at the next stop. We arrived at a large gas station for truck drivers only and told our driver that we were going to find other drivers heading in our direction. During our journey to this station, this guy contacted another driver, suggesting that he could also take us, perhaps one at a time. I thought to myself, now he's planning a threesome. When I was finally alone with my boyfriend, I remained calm and dropped hints about what had happened. I insisted that we should not stay with this driver no matter what. It took us about 5 minutes to find a group of truck drivers from our country. They were having beers and joking around, and 2 of them agreed to take us. I was overjoyed. We returned to the truck to retrieve our belongings. The driver had already brought his friend along and was offering my boyfriend the opportunity to take a shower at the gas station, with him covering the expenses. For no apparent reason, he was quite persistent, and as I distinctly remember, he never offered it to me. Needless to say, these 2 guys were very disappointed to see us go. I still remember how they looked at me as I retrieved our backpacks from the truck. I never told my ex-boyfriend the details. I was just fortunate that we were away from that truck driver, and I don't think he ever realized how bad the situation was at that time. I remained composed throughout, but internally I was trembling. I could see how desperate that truck driver was and how eager he was to get rid of my boyfriend. I was frustrated with myself for staying with him in the truck by myself, but all of our belongings were there. I was also upset for not fighting back, but the situation was so sudden and I became very frightened. After that experience, I always made sure I had some company when hitchhiking. This happened a long time ago. I'm guessing back in 2006, and I couldn't have been older than 4 at the time, yet I vividly remember the fear I felt during this encounter. It was an early summer morning and the sun was up, but few people were out. In fact, the streets were practically dead that morning. My mom decided to take my sister, only 1 year old, seated in a stroller, and I, to throw away some garbage at the garbage station. I might add that the garbage station is kind of secluded from nearby houses, bordering one of those deep, dark forests of eastern Sweden. Since I was only 4 when this happened, the memories from the incident have faded a lot. However, my mom remembers all of it. She says that upon entering the garbage station, she immediately got an eerie feeling of being watched. I remember that feeling too. I felt creeped out, even though I didn't know why I was scared. I guess I could sense my mom's fear. Walking along that secluded garbage station, my mom suddenly stopped and told me this: "Hold on to the stroller as hard as you can and don't let go, no matter what." That's my most vivid memory I have of this, and I don't think I'll ever forget those words. I'll at least never forget how they made me feel. It was as if my blood turned to ice. I just froze. My mom sounded stern, but even a toddler can sense when someone's scared shitless. My mom was definitely afraid of something. The rest is just a blur. I don't remember much, apart from the aforementioned, so I'll let the rest of the story be told from the perspective of my mother. This is the recollection of her experience, recalled to the best of my abilities, but in my own words. Not far from where we were standing, a truck was parked with a man seated in the front. Nothing unusual. A lot of truck drivers stopped to rest by the side of the road, but this man was staring. He wouldn't stop staring. He stared right at me, examining my body with the determined gaze of a predator. He truly seemed pleased by the fear he'd instilled in our faces. And his eyes, they were something else, almost as if they didn't belong to a human, but rather to a predator on the savannah. I felt like prey, stuck in the claws of a lion. I just couldn't move. That's when he smiled at me. I remember that dead smile, those cold, calculating eyes, and the way he licked his lips, almost as if to say, I could kill you if I wanted to. I believe this was the time when my mom told me to hold on to the stroller, to hold on tightly and not let go. My mom is a small woman, 5'2", weighing only about 100 pounds, and she could easily have been overpowered by the overweight man in the truck. My mom later admitted that she was afraid he'd jump out of the truck and knock her out, possibly assaulting her, or even kidnapping me or my sister. We bolted out of there. We didn't throw away much garbage that morning. We just turned around and walked home as fast as a mom can do with a stroller and a 4-year-old toddler by her side. We've never talked about what happened that day, up until very recently. The incident has always lingered somewhere in the back of my mind as that weird thing that happened when I was a child. And every time I walk past that garbage station, I get a weird feeling in the pit of my stomach. As previously mentioned, this happened around 2006. Fast forward to 2008, the face of a 10-year-old little girl called Engla was printed across the front page of every newspaper in sight. She had been abducted, sexually assaulted, and murdered. The perpetrator was an overweight truck driver named Anders Eklund, now known as one of Sweden's most infamous killers. Anders Eklund was charged with the murder of Engla, alongside the rape and murder of a woman named Pernilla. He's also suspected of abducting another little girl who's still missing, making him a pedophile, a serial rapist, and a serial killer. My mom says that when she saw Eklund's picture in the paper, especially when she saw those cold, familiar eyes, she knew he was the creepy man from the garbage station that early morning all those years ago. Thinking how my mom, or my sister, or me, or all of us could have been his victims, that sends chills up my spine. In 2003, I was working as a stripper in the Phoenix area. I had been dancing for almost a year and was still getting the hang of how to get the most money from a regular with the least amount of clinginess reciprocated. I was also working off and on at 4 different clubs. I'll be calling them Club 1, 2, 3, and 4 for reference, alternating day shifts and night shifts depending on money. One night shift, this skinny, scraggly-looking guy comes into Club 1 and hones in on me right away. From the way he's bouncing and twitching in his seat, it's clear even in strip club lighting, he's a meth addict and higher than my heels. No biggie, I was raised by meth addicts. As long as he is happy, this should be easy money. We go to VIP, chat, I relieve him of his paycheck, and he goes on his way. The next night he's back again and is looking for me. I get his name, Steve, name changed to protect the insane obviously, tell him my name Tori, my fake backstory, and head back to VIP again. He tells me he's a truck driver and is only in town a few days a month. We have a perfectly nice if not jittery time, no red flags. Everyone goes home happy. Repeat the next night, then I don't see him for a month. This continues for about 4 months. He starts bringing in the finest gas station meth addict approved gifts when he comes in to see me. By this point, he is also serenading me half the time I'm dancing for him. His favorite was Picture by Kid Rock and Sheryl Crow. He sang it despite whatever song was playing. Thankfully, I spent a lot of my time with my back to him and my ass doesn't have ears, so I only could hear snippets of his impassioned baritone. The singing was creepy, not just because it's on repeat. He's now gesturing specific lyrics at me. The longer he sings, the more grabby he's getting. Not anywhere illegal, but grabbing my face to force me to stare back at him, intertwining our fingers to hold hands, pressing my hand to his heart, trying to press his hand to mine. By the end of this month's visit, he asks me to move in with him. He tells me that he just wants to know I'm at his house all the time. Of course, he also envisions himself as the typical customer in shining armor. He's telling me he wants to save me, take me away from all this. I decide to be a little more honest with him and explain I have a girlfriend and am not interested in men, not interested in him, and that I am happy living where I am. He tells me he will let me keep my girlfriend. All he needs is to go down on me the 3 days a month he's in town. I shut him down again. He starts begging me to think about it, and he will come help me move in with him when he gets back next month. After this visit, I ask the manager to ban him. Unfortunately, without a pic of him on hand at all times, that's pretty much impossible. I settled for alerting the security, bartender, and manager to give me a warning if he comes in again asking for me. When his time of the month comes around, I switch to a different shift at clubs 2, 3, and 4 to avoid him. When I go back to Club 1 the next week, he has left a couple filled plastic grocery bags for me. They're full of notes scrawled on crumpled, dirty scraps of paper, silk roses, small stuffed animals, panty roses, mismatched taped-together greeting cards, and other detritus. There's a barely legible letter professing his love, insistence again that I move into his place, and some poorly written graphic details of what he wanted to do to my body. I was sufficiently grossed out and creeped out, and happy I had dodged his monthly visit. The following month rolls around, and I ditch what had become my regular club to avoid him again. I'm working the day shift at Club 2, good money from lots of bored dudes on their lunch breaks. It's getting to the last couple hours of my shift. I was on stage not really paying attention as I finished up my routine. I didn't see him until I was heading down the stairs to get off stage. He was a few feet in front of me, waving, and starts yelling "Tori" over and over. There was no way to get around him. As soon as I got to the bottom of the stairs, he grabbed me in a big hug. I was still topless from being on stage and did not want him touching me. He wouldn't let go and kept grabbing handfuls of my hair and smelling it. I pushed away from him and start to tell him that my shift is over. That was my last stage, and I'm headed home. He looks upset and frustrated and says he just wants to hang out with me before he has to leave town tonight. I tell him he will have to pay for me to sit with him, whether I'm dancing or not, and he agrees. I go and give the bartender and security a heads up that he's my creepy stalker guy, then go back to taking his money and attempting to placate him. Instead of having me actually dance for him, he has me just straddle him topless while we talk. Not as unusual as it sounds, plus a nice break for me. He was unusually shaky and jumpy this time, so I resorted to making him sit on his hands. He proceeds to tell me how he went to multiple clubs looking for me this month, how he asked various clubs if his girlfriend Tori was there. He tells me he has his house all cleaned up and ready for me to move into. I remind him again that I am not moving in with him. He excitedly replies, "Well, you never know." I again remind him of my girlfriend, who I was making plans to move to Canada with. He says he's in love with me, and that our whole lives are about to change now that we've found each other. Between all this jilted conversation, he's singing lines from Picture again, and prodding me to sing along with him, like some fucked up romantic duet. Finally, despite the money, I decide he's just being way too crazy this time and really creeping me out. I tell him I'm done with my shift and I really need to get home. Before I can get off him, he suddenly wraps his arms around my waist, picks me up, and starts running towards the hallway that leads to the exit. I'm still topless, wrapped around this cracked-out, skinny, scraggly, dirty trucker while trying to flag down the bartender, DJ, or anyone because security wasn't there all of a sudden. He made it to the hallway, and about 10 feet from the door, when the absolutely massive security guard stepped back inside from walking a girl to her car. Steve tries to dart around him, and I'm reaching for security, while Steve tries to pull me away from security and get to the door. The brick wall of a security guard manages to plant himself in front of us and pulls me off of him before Steve can try anything else. He insists he was just joking and that he was just trying to tell me goodbye. I bolted out of there and into the dressing room while he was still yelling for me to come say goodbye to him as security practically carried his bony ass outside. Thankfully, he was banned this time. I decided to take a vacation with my girlfriend for a couple months after that, just in case he tried to show up in the parking lot of the club to stuff me in his trunk. He continued to call the club looking for me while I was gone, They lied and said I quit working there.